How we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today I'd like to start a series of essay-style videos based on MMA and maybe other topics if people are open to it. Today, I'm going to be discussing why Dricus Du Plessis will not receive a title shot. Let me start off by saying this. Dricus Du Plessis 100% deserves the title shot at middleweight, and no one can argue against this. He's 6-0 in the UFC with 5 finishes, with wins over Brad Tavares, Darren Till, Derek Brunson, and in his most recent outing at UFC 290, Robert Whittaker, who was seen as the co-champ at middleweight. If Israel isn't in the UFC, Robert Whittaker is the champion. But at UFC 290, Dricus Du Plessis defied the odds, and not only beat Bobby Knuckles, he finished him in a dominant performance. Winning the first round by taking Robert Whittaker down and landing some vicious ground and pound, opening a cut above his temple, and in the second round, Dricus landed the shot heard round the MMA world as Robert Whittaker was doing the Reaper Rush. Dricus landed a right jab that sat down Robert Whittaker. Now, Robert Whittaker has always had an issue with this, seen in the Gastelum fight, the Cannonier fight, the Till fight, and especially the Adesanya fight, where he rushes in and gets clipped with a jab rushing in. But Dricus Du Plessis became the first to really capitalize off of it. After the drop, you'd expect Dricus, as the fighter he is, to rush and throw a shit ton of non-contributory shots, but Dricus showed patience and found his way into trapping Robert against the fence, landing a barrage of punches and finding the finish. The first time someone other than Israel Adesanya found a win over Robert Whittaker at middleweight, and the first time anyone not named Israel Adesanya beat Robert Whittaker since February 22nd, 2014, when he lost to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at welterweight. With a win over Robert Whittaker, there is no doubt in anyone's minds that Dricus Du Plessis definitely deserves the title shot. And with this win, Dricus Du Plessis has the for sure next title shot against Israel Adesanya. But wait, Dricus suffers a foot injury, and he can't fight. So Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland are fighting. Well, that's an easy fight for Israel Adesanya.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 5 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards for a decision. All 3 judges score this contest 49-46 for the winner by unanimous decision, and undisputed UFC middleweight champion of the world, Sean Strickland.
Well, that's not good. Almost 2 months to the day after Dricus shocked the world by beating Robert Whittaker, on September 9th, Sean Strickland got one of the biggest upsets in UFC history as he uprighted the at one point perceived next middleweight GOAT, Israel Adesanya, off of his knockout of the year-esque finish over Alex Poatan Pereira. Sean Strickland going into the fight was slated as an at least plus 450, and not only did he beat Israel Adesanya, he became the first person to record a knockdown over the last stylebender, and made Israel look so bad that people question to this day that there is no way that was Israel in the cage that night. But the fact of the matter is that Israel was not prepared for the style Sean brought to the table. And this loss creates such a massive rift at middleweight, because you have a deserving contender in Dricus Du Plessis, a long-reigning champion who was outclassed across 5 rounds in a fashion we haven't seen since his excursion at light heavyweight, and then a champion nobody saw coming, and then a couple of other faces that we will go over in due time. This loss creates a rift as many clamor that Israel Adesanya should receive an immediate rematch, while well-minded individuals like myself realize that Israel is 1-2 in his last 3, losing his title in both losses. The Alex rematch at least made sense, as that was Israel's first loss ever at middleweight in the UFC, but Sean showed so many holes in Adesanya's game that Alex slightly showed in his duo of fights against Israel Adesanya in the UFC. The reason I say that this created a rift at middleweight was because it was well known that Dricus Du Plessis was supposed to get a title shot after beating Robert Whittaker at UFC 290. but after suffering a foot injury, and when Dricus Du Plessis asked the event to be pushed back between him and Israel Adesanya, the UFC insisted it take place in September, which Dricus Du Plessis had to decline, as he wouldn't be able to perform at the level he'd like to, which is understandable, which allowed Sean Strickland to get a title shot, which fans knew after Israel would beat Sean Strickland, it would be Israel and Dricus throwing down. This was a big ticket fight, as fans were very intrigued at this matchup, as both kind of didn't like each other, actually. But now that Sean Strickland is the champion, there is no money fight anymore in the title for Dricus Du Plessis, as him and Sean Strickland do not hate each other and have no animosity, which doesn't bring money and doesn't bring fans. The casual fans that are now hopping onto the Sean Strickland bandwagon most likely don't even understand how fun a matchup between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis would actually be. The fight the casual fans would want to see is Dricus Du Plessis and Israel Adesanya, and the matchups they understand for the actual title fight are ones I'm going to list right now. October 21st, 2023, UFC 294 will take place at Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. One of the biggest cards of the entire year. And in the co-main event, we have an insane middleweight matchup with Khamzat Borshamayev and Paulo Borrachinha Costa. Both have year-long layoffs. Khamzat's last fight was a win over Kevin Holland at UFC 279, and Paulo Costa's was a win over Luke Rockhold at UFC 278. Now, while Paulo may be ranked 6, and Khamzat isn't even ranked, both are significantly bigger stars than Dricus Du Plessis. Whilst they don't hold the middleweight resume that Dricus Du Plessis has, hell, Khamzat has 2 fights at middleweight, and his best win of those 2 is against Gerald Meerschaert. But with the online presence that both Khamzat and Paulo Costa have, they are infinitely bigger stars than Dricus Du Plessis. And it sucks for Dricus that the month after the upset of the year at UFC 293, we have a super big matchup at UFC 294, which is one of the biggest cards of the entire year. And in the co-main event, they are fighting. And if either one of them win, they will gain massive fan spikes, especially Paulo, as Khamzat has what I like to call the proton-electron effect, which in simple terms is when a fighter has a very large fan base, but an equal or more hater base that wishes to see them lose. Examples of the proton-electron effect exist in Conor McGregor, Colby Covington, Chael Sonnen, and hell, even Aljamain Sterling. This brings more pay-per-views and more fans. Khamzat and Paulo are also more prominent on the mic than Dricus Du Plessis, which in turn gets more views and money. And I know that Dricus and Israel's encounter got a shit ton of views, but it had nothing to do with Dricus. It was all Israel, as he called him the N-word a multitude of times, which when everybody saw it live, you couldn't hold in a chuckle, as you could tell Israel was blitzed off his ass, maybe more drunk than he was August 19th. Speaking of Israel, he's also a bigger star than Dricus Du Plessis, and he's also starting to gain that proton-electron effect after his recent scandals are being brought into the light. And I hate to say this, but a rematch with Israel and Sean Strickland does more pay-per-views than Sean and Dricus would do. And if we're going to be talking about deserving title shots, how can we leave Jared Cannonier out? I know he has the fight with Roman Dolidze in the works, which by the way makes 0 sense, but his win streak holds wins over the current champ Sean Strickland and Marvin Vettori. I know he arguably lost the Sean Strickland fight, I thought Sean won, but on paper, he did beat him. While Dricus Du Plessis deserves a title shot, some people forget that the UFC is a business. The rankings, while they should matter, realistically don't. All in all, they're here to make fun fights for the fans that will in turn make the most money. Many examples have been seen this year. Jorge Masvidal and Gilbert Burns fought at UFC 287, with Jorge being ranked 11th, coming off 3 consecutive humiliating losses, fighting number 5 Gilbert Burns coming off a win over Neil Magny. The only reason they made that fight was because it was in Miami, and Jorge is a humongous star. Hell, Sean Strickland getting the title shot over Jared Cannonier realistically makes no sense, but they went with Sean because it was a new fight, and let's be honest, the Adesanya-Cannonier fight kinda sucked. Nate and Conor 1 is a beautiful example. There is no reason that Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor should have fought other than the fact that they didn't like each other. And a brand new example is Matt Frevola and Benoit Saint Denis. Matt should be fighting up, while Benoit should be fighting for a ranked contender spot. Matt should not have to fight down after knocking out Drew Dober. Shavkat and Kelvin Gastelum, why did the UFC think that was a good idea? And finally, Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev. And you see, it comes full circle. If Khamzat Chimaev wins against Paulo Costa, they will give him a title shot. While rankings should matter, the UFC favors the bad guys. Because let's be honest, everyone secretly likes a good villain. It's unfair to Dricus Du Plessis, but it's a play of the cards, and a money fight coming his way is the juicy fight he wants oh so bad with Israel Adesanya. It isn't fair, but it's business. I know this video was quite long, but tell me if you guys enjoyed it. I'd really appreciate it if you let me know, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.